Hello and welcome to the Spider-Man fan who watched all the Tobey Maguire movies growing up and now compares everything he sees to them show. I'm your host, that guy. I think a lot of us remember what it was like to be an Xbox player in 2018. Yeah, it was a great game, but it was also just one game instead of multiple. But hey, at least you could play Forza 4 and, $60 to drive a car? That's just what driving a car costs. On second thought, I'll just replay Red Dead 2 for the fourth time. One of those games that tantalized Xbox players was Insomniac's own Spider-Man, the game. And boy was it amazing, no pun intended. That said, it wasn't good enough to win Game of the Year. God of War did that somehow. I'm still amazed that it beat Red Dead 2, but whatever. Either way, Spider-Man didn't really have a chance to take the award. Still a solid game, but it was by no means Game of the Year. 2020 rolls around and Spider-Man Miles Morales drops. We're on the PS5 now, gameplay mechanics are just getting better. Xbox fans can rest easy though, because at least in my opinion, this game was less eligible for Game of the Year than the last one, just because of how little it innovated compared to the games of its time and its predecessor. But it is nice to see Microsoft win one, and it's The Last of Us 2 that wins. Okay, well I guess you could always buy a gun and shoot yourself, but at that point, it's cheaper to buy a PlayStation. Thanks, Obama. But hey, at least you have Peppa Pig to look forward to. What's really funny is when I was editing this, I pasted that meme over the video, and when I looked it up, it turned out that meme is a lie. You can get it on the PlayStation. Xbox can't even solely have that for you. Oh, it's a joke. Who would want that as exclusive anyway? I don't know, man. They're asking $45 for it on the PlayStation Store, so it's gotta be something. But as 2021 rolls around, Sony decides that the PS5 has been out long enough for them to start releasing games for it. Which, that's about time. Until the PS5 got its own games, it was less of a flex and more of a badge of fiscal irresponsibility, but what isn't? And now that Sony feels comfortable releasing games that can only be played on the PS5, we can really utilize the PS5's full potential as a console. So, Spider-Man 2 is announced to release in 2023 as a PS5 exclusive release. Nice. I know there was a lot of hype surrounding Spider-Man 2, and frankly, I distanced myself from it. I really didn't get to experience that because I was just a PC guy at the time. So I just kind of turned a blind eye to the Spider-Man games. That was until they released them on Steam, and I played them both within like a week. And by the time I was done, of course, my Spider-Man appetite had been thoroughly whet, and I had to do it. I just had to. And you know what? I got 100% in this game in less than a week, so I'll say it. Spider-Man 2 was amazing, but it could have been better. So let's break this game down. I'm going to divide this video into sections, and what we're going to start with first is characters. Spider-Man games are sold on characters, I think. Characters like Spider-Man, Bad Spider-Man, Great Spider-Man, the list goes on. So I feel like that's what we should start with. So first, Spider-Man Senior. I really like Yuri Lowenthal's Spider-Man. He's my second favorite Spider-Man of all time, topped only by, you guessed it, Tobey Maguire's.
Gonna cry?
I love the idea of a Spider-Man who's older and well-adjusted, but still faces the day-to-day struggles of being Spider-Man. And now he even has another Spider-Man to mentor. I think it really plays well into the whole great power, great responsibility archetype. Besides that, his voice acting is just phenomenal. I was really disappointed that we didn't get this.
Get back here, Shocker! Shocker! You can't escape me! I'll chase you to the ends of the earth!
Because Kraven killed Shocker off screen, Mutt Williams style. But at least we got this.
I didn't know there were bears in these woods. Okay, before we get down to business, there's something I have to tell you. I'm fresh out of honey.
Speaking of, Symbiote Peter was very well done, I thought.
Why don't you pop some more pills and say what you really feel?
He's going from, I'm gonna get this off of me, to help Harry as soon as possible, to was crazy to watch, and that's saying something because we've seen this storyline more times than we had missions as Black Spider-Man, which I hate to say is pretty few. We didn't get to play the symbiote Spidey nearly enough, but I'll get to that later. So talking about the symbiote, I think it's only right that we talk about Venom next. Venom was... I don't even know what adjectives to use for Venom. Good? It was phenomenal, I thought. I always prefer Venom as a straight-up villain to some kind of weird anti-hero. I know there's some good comics with him as an anti-hero and good games even, but I'm more of a fan of the big, scary guy being bad. So it was nice to see big, scary Venom as a big, scary bad guy, rather than whatever this was.
So you will be this armless, legless, faceless thing, won't you? Rolling down the street like a turd in the wind.
I'm not going to get too much into his character now because, much like in Spider-Man 3, Venom was a driving force in the story and the plot and really touched on a lot of central themes for all the characters in a way that other characters don't quite do. So I'm just going to save that for later in the video. That said, Venom was a perfect balance between cool and horrifying, very scary. Also, he had no reason to be called Venom in this, but I don't really care. Tied to Venom, I feel, was Harry. Harry was there. I think I have been conditioned to expect some kind of tension between him and Peter and MJ. But either way, I think their dynamic, specifically with him, could have been done a little better. Don't get me wrong, I liked Harry in this, but I think spending more time with Venom and him affected by Venom would have remedied that problem. I do think that he complemented the other characters beautifully, though. Mary Jane was so cool in this. I'll get around to what they did so perfectly with her later, but she was just such a well-done character this time around. I'll say now, though, the same thing I said for Yuri's Spider-Man, that it's nice to see MJ as like a competent, well-rounded adult who is able to treat others with respect and is also like very self-sufficient and just cool. It's a breath of fresh air for MJ. Scream felt a bit rushed, but served her character well, so I don't really mind. Now, I'm gonna put some extra time into Miles, so buckle in. Miles has been done so dirty by Insomniac. He's a good character. He really is. I see a lot of people online upset that Marvel keeps referring to Miles as just Spider-Man and not another name for the character. Well, I think that if in the real world there were two spider-powered people swinging around New York City saving lives, I think they would have different names. They wouldn't both be called Spider-Man. But it's not the real world, and I think him sharing a name with Peter's Spider-Man really does the character well and fits thematically. Not just for his specific story in the Insomniac universe, but also just the story of Miles Morales and Spider-Man in general, even going back to the whole idea of his creation with Donald Glover, but that's neither here nor there. It's much better than calling him something like
the Great Electric Spider.
See how stupid that sounds? I think most Spider-Man fans agree with me, so it's kind of disappointing to see Insomniac only agrees half-heartedly. We got Spider-Man PS4, which was just about Peter's Spider-Man and Miles was in it. And then we got Spider-Man Miles Morales, which was about Miles and was pretty decent. And then we get Spider-Man 2, which is about Peter and Miles, but mostly it's about Peter, and then we get some uncompelling Miles content on the side. I thought his interactions with Black Cat and Martin Lee were pretty well done, but even Lee's stuff felt a little forced at times. Besides when Miles helps free Peter from Venom, he generally just felt like an afterthought, which you shouldn't have in a game that's about both characters. When I was playing, I'd switch to Miles because the game forced me to, and I'd kind of think, oh yeah, he's in the game, isn't he? He's kind of like the Robin to Peter's Batman, and it wasn't really sidekick action that I was coming for.
You mean sidekick?
We don't use that term. It's degrading.
I think this clip perfectly encapsulates the issue with Miles.
That suit's not an alien, is it?
It's time for a Miles Morales original, you know? One of one.
Looks good.
First off, Peter lied to his face. I like how Miles just helped Peter beat this huge alien threat, and now he's watching it spread across the entire city and maybe the entire world, and his first thought is, you know what? I should make a new suit that looks bad. There's nothing to prompt it, really. There wasn't a large enough watershed moment for Miles to have to make that change to his appearance. Not to mention, he already had a Miles Morales original. He gets it in his own game, and it was cool. I love that suit. It's not a 1 of 1, it's a 2 of 2. So I genuinely believe there was more planned for Miles' character, and it just got scrapped. It just leaves his character feeling really surface level and low stakes, and it doesn't help that he's ridiculously strong. He's basically like Electro with Spider-Man powers in this. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think he's that strong in almost any other form of Miles Morales content. I'm gonna break down how Miles faces adversity in a fight. Step 1, Miles starts fighting someone that seems stronger than him. Step 2, the guy fighting him says something along the lines of, "You're a stupid idiot, you'll never be as good of a Spider-Man, and everyone in your life resents you, especially that Spider-Man." Step 3, Miles shakily denies it, but clearly believes it for some reason. Step 4, the bad guy traps him, and then acts like he's gonna kill him or do something bad. Step 5, Miles decides to believe in himself and explodes in a barrage of electricity and beats the guy. I don't know how many times the writers expected us to find these scenes emotionally impactful, but it has to be at least a few times less than they tried. I fully expect it to happen every time he gets in a fight, and it happens every time he gets in a fight. There's more I want to talk about with his character, but I'll save that till the story segment. I don't know. I hate to hate on Miles too much. I think I see Miles through Spider-Man tinted glasses. Or the opposite. How does that saying work? I think Spider-Verse Miles has spoiled me to expect better out of Miles Morales. How's that? I think Spider-Verse Miles is more of the
I say whatever I want. Yeah, I do whatever I want.
and Insomniac Miles is more of a
Money for fun.
But let's move on from him. Kraven was very, very cool. I've never been the biggest Kraven fan. It's not that I dislike him. I think I'm just partial to any villain that appeared in the Raimiverse. I think the only content that I've watched with Kraven in it altogether would be Ultimate Spider-Man, which I watched 11, 12 years old, and then Spectacular Spider-Man, which I remember he was pretty good in that, but I never really learned too much about him through that. Maybe I would have if they finished the show. So it was a pleasant surprise to me that Kraven was such a compelling character in this game. Even his introduction had me hooked. I see this guy walking through the woods, and I'm like, oh, that's Kraven, alright. I guess they kind of toned him down, but that's fine. And then I went to, oh, never mind, he's super cool. And before you say you saw that coming, that's what the director was going for, so shut up. The idea of a terminally ill Kraven who just wants one final hunt to fulfill himself before he dies is so cool. A villain who wants to go out on his own terms. And it brought us one of the most emotional scenes in video game history. That said, he did kill a lot of Spidey's villains. I don't think that's a bad thing since we already got to see these villains in action. I just wished that he would have killed Screwball. But I really think that killing them established him as a formidable foe. And I think it drove the plot forward in a way that Spidey being able to save all of them couldn't. We've seen the Sinister Six. I think it's okay to move on. Now that we've established that the stakes are so high, we get to have this huge climax where Venom beats him and then eats his head. The stakes have never felt higher. Now, I know this is a small character and that we never actually get to see her in person, but I want to talk about Danica. This is going to sound harsh, but I hate Danica. I leave her podcast on in the hope that we'll get some kind of relevance in what she says, and we never do. She's like the Spider-Man to my J. Jonah Jameson. Literally everything that she says is just a recap of the story that I've already played through. I know she's supposed to be cool and liberal and offer that perspective, but as the player, you're already expected to take that perspective, you know? I already know that Venom is bad for Peter. I don't need her to magically know that too, and I especially don't need her chuggy commentary on it.
Come at me in the comments if you want, but I am putting it out there. This new black suit thing, whatever it really is, it ain't no good. You can quote me. All right, kids, Danik out.
Something bad actually happens with Peter and the symbiote, even though it doesn't look any different to the eye of the public, and all of a sudden she's jumping to Jameson-level conclusions, which makes no sense in the story because she would have no reason to think differently. She's just right because that's how she was written. I don't know how to put that eloquently. It's just weird. I like the idea of her having a neutral perspective on Spider-Man, maybe showing some journalistic integrity, but the writers don't seem to want to do that. They seem to want to make her this character who knows and cares for Spider-Man personally, even though she doesn't know him personally, and it just winds up feeling like this weird narrative hand-holding. Who else? Sandman. He made for one of the greatest tutorials I've ever played in a game. It was really cool. It was interesting not to see him as the stereotypical American villain. Not bad, just different. I wouldn't have complained to see John DiMaggio voicing him again.
Nah, wait! Revenge is for chumps! I don't care about Spider-Man. All I ever wanted was the big score. And now I got the power to get it.
Let's go! I love stealing. I love taking things.
But yeah, there's not much to say about him. His character was less of like the stupid criminal type and more of like the Sap story, Flint Marko from Spider-Man 3. Nothing much new there going on, but it was fun. But speaking of that tutorial, how's about we get on to the gameplay? I think a Spider-Man game, at least in the modern sense, is nothing without its traversal mechanics, and that leads me to think that's what I should lead off with. Swinging through the city in this game is just an absolute joy. Just knowing that it was built on the next generation of play systems means that it wasn't just able to look better and feel better as you swing, but it was able to handle it at higher speeds. So I guess I'll conclude before I really even start talking about this, but traveling, just in general, was massively improved. But specifically, I want to look at some of the new abilities that came out with it. The Loop was a lot of fun. It felt really cool. It gave me like Raimi Spider-Man vibes, and we know how I feel about that. I love it. Right alongside it is the web slingshot. It just is nice to be able to get into the air without having to take time to build up speed. You're just on the ground and boom, you're swinging as fast as you can through the city. Anyway, I love it. Turning sharp corners is a nice addition, especially when you're doing those chase missions. To be completely honest, I didn't use it a ton. Not because it was a bad mechanic, but because I think I was just so used to the other games where I had to make those turns myself because I'm old and set in my ways. But I liked it. It's a good addition. The special traversal abilities were kind of lost on me, and it's because I'm dumb. You see, when I see something with a meter on it, I immediately think, oh, I need to save that for a rainy day, and then I'll only use it every few hours of playing the game. In reality, you can access it after like a minute, but I don't think of it. I don't want to waste it. But that's because I'm dumb. They are cool, but I don't think that their effect is big enough or cool enough to justify the wait between uses. I could see like a couple seconds wait, but I do think the wait is too long. The fast travel system felt a little cleaner. I'll be real, I only used it once and then never again, just so I could see what it was like. And I thought it had at least been improved. It's solid. And that brings me to the last one, and go ahead and cue the music. The web wings. I'm probably wrong, but I feel like I haven't seen web wings represented outside of the comics except in something like Spectacular Spider-Man. Chime in if you had one of these bad boys from Burger King. They're kind of a weird concept for Spider-Man because he swings and wings fly. Honestly, if you asked me back before I played this if I thought that they were a good addition to the game, I'd probably say no. It seems like it would take the fun of swinging out of the game, and let me tell you, boy was I wrong. The ease with which you can switch between these modes while whipping through the city is just so smooth. And honestly, I feel like getting across the river would have been super tedious otherwise, so really good addition. The way that you can switch between swinging and the wings after a huge burst of speed is just full of the exaggerated swagger of a bird. Also biking. I like the bikes. I also like that people got Venom on the bike. That's really funny. As far as like the fighting aspect goes, it was absolutely improved. pairing was a really cool addition that I once again was too dumb to use until I absolutely had to in that lizard fight.
No wonder your family left you.
The abilities and gadgets being toggled instead of on a wheel definitely made the game feel a lot more real time. The skill tree was pretty cool too. I'll talk about Anti-Venom and his impacts on the story a little bit later. But as far as the skill tree goes and just gameplay goes, I really loved the addition of Anti-Venom. I was pretty disappointed when Peter got Venom off and I saw that the abilities that I had spent skill points trying to improve were just not available on the skill tree anymore. I had already felt like Miles was way stronger than Peter, so losing all that power just hurt. I mean, I know he gets his robot arms back, but those things are weak in comparison to Miles, who can explode. So yeah, I'm gonna use him in all those Venom Nest fights. That is until we got Anti-Venom, and he gets all of the same effects as Venom, all the things that you paid for, and a little more for the waiting time. Now he can take out, I think, the green guys, the green Venom doohickeys, like with just a single shot, which was pretty cool. So I love that. I thought it balanced it out. Speaking of balancing, I do wish that the mini games, I don't really want to call them side missions. So like these, I do wish that they were more evenly spread between Peter and Miles. Miles has 2 mini games, that being the Prowler Stashes and the Mysteriums. I think both of those are pretty fun. Meanwhile, Peter can only do the EMF things. Sometimes they come with little missions attached to them, but sometimes they're just puzzles. It's like playing 6-sided dominoes. If I want to play dominoes, I'm going to play Red Dead 2. Or dominoes, I guess. And that's alright. I kind of wish that the quality of Miles's gameplay was equal to the quality of his story writing. I keep going back to Miles, man. And again, his story gameplay was... Why? I get that we wanted to develop Miles's passion for music, but I feel like there could have been a better way to do that than playing Beat Saber. So here's my thought on the whole disparity between Miles's gameplay and Peter's gameplay, and that is tag teaming. You know, in the old Lego Star Wars game, when you'd come up against a boss who had Force Lightning, Sidious, Count Dooku, there's not a third one. If you were playing by yourself, let's say you were playing as Obi-Wan and the boss fight would be Count Dooku. So you'd want to take Obi-Wan and run him into Count Dooku and hit him, but before you could, Count Dooku sometimes would get out his Force Lightning and push you away, and you wouldn't be able to get to him with Obi-Wan. But you could toggle to, say, Anakin, who would be over here and not being electrocuted by Dooku, so you could switch over to him and then hit Count Dooku, and then Obi-Wan wouldn't be electrocuted anymore. Maybe I didn't need to go into that much detail, but you know what I'm talking about. You could have the 2 Spider-Men, and you could toggle between them, playing either in story mode or in the battles throughout the city. Say one of the enemies had a grapple function while one Spider-Man's grappled. It could be as easy as one of those unbounded keys, this one or this one, that you could hotkey however you wanted. One of them could be set to switch to the other Spider-Man when they're in close proximity. Maybe we can see that in the next one, I don't know. I just think it would be nice to have a boss fight where you're working together and it actually feels like you're working together instead of switching between one Spider-Man and the other as one gets knocked out, and then you have to bring in the other Spider-Man with some kind of Deus Ex Machina and then go back and forth and back and forth. Got a little tiring, especially with the Venom fights. As far as any of the story missions go, I think the Venom mission is just one of my favorite missions in any video game. Up there with raiding Braithwaite Manor or gathering flowers for Ben the Cow's grave. You're just an absolute tank in this. I don't know if it's actually possible to die in a fight, and that's okay because it's demonstrating how strong and just terrifying Venom is. I don't think there was a better way to represent that, honestly. But I think my favorite fight in the game had to be Symbiote Peter versus Miles. The battleground was perfect. The bell was a great mechanic. It felt very high stakes. It was a really great use of Miles as Spider-Man, but I'll get into that later. The Sandman fights are fun. I genuinely thought that I busted my controller the first time that I broke those crystals. I didn't know that PlayStation controller triggers did that, so that was startling. What else? I guessed the Old MacDonald password song without even exploring his house. I saw a barn and I was like, that's probably the password. Maybe don't set the key to the room with dangerous chemicals in your basement to the tune of your toddler's favorite song. It just feels like a recipe for your son to, I don't know, be eaten by a large lizard. Just spitballing. It was a huge L that you could not change the time of day in this one. I know we didn't have Harry's little research stations where it affected gameplay, but I wanted to be able to swing around at night as Black Spider-Man, especially this one. I wanted to recreate this scene, and I couldn't do it because it looks stupid in the day. But you don't have to put it in Harry's research centers, put it on the mini-map. I don't care. NPCs were a lot more fun. You could hear a lot of conversations around New York that were just hilarious.
A customer brought in some leche frita last week. It was like eating a hug.
I'm allergic to leche. A leche hug make me blow up.
What about just a regular hug? Bring it in, buddy.
I do wish the physics with NPCs were a little better, kind of like knocking those guys down like bowling pins. It's a lot of fun for me. I thought the motion controls were all right. I think the PlayStation 5 just feels obliged to use them since they're part of the controller. They're always a little underwhelming because they don't want to force you to use motion controls like the Wii did. So it's always just like the smallest portion of the game. It's like, oop, Joel's light went out, better give that controller a shake. Help Peter aim the basketball, or don't, and just use the analog stick. I'll be honest though, I used those controls. It was a fun little change of pace. I liked it. Actually, mentioning The Last of Us reminds me of one of the best improvements to these games, and that's obviously Mary Jane. Some developer was obviously just like, okay, everyone hated MJ's missions in the first game, so we need to fix that. What if we just played The Last of Us? What? Yeah, I mean, they're both Sony IPs, so what's Naughty Dog gonna do? Well, I guess that's not a bad point, actually, yeah. Yeah, and we should make MJ the deadliest character in the game. What? Yeah, no, I'm talking like John Wick killing robots, aliens, big aliens. Okay, no, I could get behind that. Also, everything she wears is cool. What does that have to do with it? Are you even supposed to be here? Yeah, this is for Insomniac, right? Yeah, it is. Where's your name tag? Huh? What? No, can I please just see the doctor now? I'm very sleep deprived. And you know what? It was awesome. It was cool. Yeah, it was a lot like The Last of Us. Yeah, they made her OP, but just like the director said, I don't care. I do wonder what she's capable of, though, with just an actual gun. New York might not need a Spider-Man after that. Overall, I think the gameplay was beautiful. You know, gotta hand it to the developers. Let's give them a hand.
Developers. Yes!
Anyhow, I think that moves us on to the graphics. Obviously, it's gonna be a good-looking game. It's made in 2023. If something winds up looking like Knights of the Old Republic, I think we have a couple issues. This is one of the few games that I would compare graphically to Red Dead 2, but at this point, I expect that. Red Dead 2 came out in 2018, and we have better systems than we did back then. So I'll just say the game was visually stunning, and I'll leave it at that. This game gives me room to talk about what I think is one of the most important parts of any piece of Spider-Man content, and that's the suits. I know there are a lot, so I'll just focus on the ones that stand out to me. There was admittedly a lot of suits to take on when it came to making all these in Spider-Man because there are so many Spider-Man variants out there. And the developers made it a prerogative to include every single cinematic Spider-Man suit. I may be out of line to say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. We don't need every single version of Tom Holland's Spider-Man suit. There's too many and they don't look good enough to justify. One per movie would be fine. I don't ever need to see the Iron Spider suit. It looks bad. In fact, the only suit of his that you're ever gonna see me swinging around in is the new red and blue suit from the end of No Way Home. The most interaction I'll ever have with the other ones is unlocking them to get 100%. There's a lot of suits like that, actually. Color palette feature fixes it a little bit. That was a great addition, by the way. But for the most part, there are just a ton of ugly suits and just mid suits that I'm never gonna touch. For Peter, I'll run over the suits that I really dislike, and then I'll go over the ones I like. So, dislike. First of all, any suit with a ton of metal immediately goes in the dislike column. I hate them. Please stop making metal suits. They look dumb. Might be a hot take, but the Civil War suit sucks. It screams ROTC kid. Stealth suit was dumb in its movie and is still dumb in this game. When I was writing this, I kind of realized that mainly what I didn't like were the ones with metal on them. I realized that the suit selection it isn't that big, and I'm coming up on the one that I hate the most. Genuinely one of the worst Spider-Man suits I've ever seen. And at least for me, it was a huge disappointment because it was the last suit that I unlocked. It's the suit you get for doing all the EMF missions. When you unlock it, you get this emotional pre-recorded message from Harry to Pete. And then it does this whole body pan of Peter putting it on. Harry really found out that Peter was Spider-Man and went, wow, my best friend is Spider-Man. I bet he'd like it if I used my wealth and access to good technology to build a whole new suit for him. So let's see, what does he like? Clearly, he likes the red and blue, and he likes his suit to be aerodynamic, so I could take that and improve on it, make like a more technically advanced take on his current suit. I think that would be really awesome. Or I could wrap him in tinfoil and put a fishbowl on his head. Yeah, I'll do that. What's worse, we unlock Miles' version of the suit way earlier in the game, just as a matter of course. So we get to see this new suit, and it's already one we've seen and just never used because it looks terrible. Bad, garbage. It's an automatic include into the garbage suits for Miles. Harry, you got me fixing to trade you for James Franco, or maybe even that Draco Malfoy looking kid from The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is looking pretty good right now. Of suits I love, like I said, Tom Holland's final suit is a really good include. Advanced Suit 2.0 is also pretty good. Anti-Venom's nothing crazy, but I thought it was a pretty solid suit. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is one of my favorites. I played probably half of the game in the Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit. Superior suit's cool. One of the few times I like replacing the blue on the suit with black. And speaking of black, the Spider-Man Noir suit was really cool in this one. I thought it was really cool in the first one, but it's cool to have the Spider-Verse one. The Last Hunt suit was cool. I didn't use it much, but I liked it. I think every iteration of the symbiote suit looked really cool. Anywhere from the classic to the first stage to that really veiny looking one, that one was really sick. But the best suit that Spider-Man has ever had, both now and when it was created back in 2011, I meant 2007, shut up, they both end in Evan, is obviously the webbed black suit. I'm talking class. I'm talking mystery. I'm talking sex appeal. Yeah, it can't move its eyes, but it doesn't need to. Just look at them. They're teeming with jazz. If I were Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, I never would have taken this suit off purely because of how sick it looks. I love this more than I love life itself. I would dig on this any day. Now, when it comes to Miles, my opinion on the metal for his suits vary a little bit. I think the black and red let him get away with a little more of the metallic look. I don't know why. Don't get me wrong, some of these suits still look terrible. That said, most of those are suits from the first game, and I really don't think that has much to do with the quality of the new game, so I won't even mention those. Of course, I'll always stand the classic suits. I think that one looks really cool. And I'll always stand the Spider-Verse suits, and any given symbiote suit really looked cool on him. But besides the ones I already mentioned, there aren't very many that really stand out to me. Obviously, the Evolved suit stands out to me. The Evolved suit has a million haters. I'm one of them. If the Evolved suit has one hater, it's just me. If the Evolved suit has no haters, I am 6 feet under in the ground. Why did you add a blue thing in the middle? You could have done black or red or not blue. Why cut the top off of the mask? Why reveal that part of your identity? What if you get a haircut? Then Spider-Man will also get a haircut. Anyone who's around you and sees both of these characters at the same time will know that it's you just because you changed at the exact same time to look exactly the same at just this portion of your head. Like, I know pretty much everyone in Miles' life knows he's Spider-Man, but I mean, at least try. Watch Insomniac just completely forget that they ever butchered his suit design like this. Maybe that's a bad read. Maybe they'll give us a little time with it before changing it, but I just don't see them sticking with it. Of the suits that I really like, there are two that really stand out, and it's these. These are great. They're goofy, and I love them. Miles does have cool suits, yeah, but these stand alone. To be completely honest with you, the suits were a little lackluster, at least in comparison to the first game. I understand there was a lot of work to do with this, but I think they could have done a lot more, especially with the symbiote suit. I think there were only 4 available symbiote suits, and I think there could have been a lot more. I really hope to see the Spectacular Spider-Man suit, and we could have gotten his version of the symbiote suit too. I really would have loved a Lego suit. Maybe licensing would have been weird for that, but he is in the established canon in Spider-Verse, so I feel like he'd fit. Cowboy Spider-Man also feels like a must-have. I really hope we see him in the next game too. I feel like there were a lot of very imaginative suits that could have replaced a lot of these very unimaginative suits. Lego Miles would be awesome. Miles' homemade suit from the Spider-Verse movies would be really cool. I think we all know what the best suit is though, and that is the Cube. Look at him. He's beautiful. He's what I aspire to be. And speaking of bugs, I never experienced the cube glitch, but I have seen that a lot of people came up against plenty of bugs where I really didn't experience that many, but I'll go over the ones that I did experience. My game crashed twice, once during the big Venom mission and once just during free roam. Had some kind of lock happen during the fight that takes place in Peter's memory where it was showing me some UI on how to do an ability and I was hitting the buttons but it wasn't happening. I guess that's a crash kind of. I also had a glitch happen immediately after where a symbiote got stuck in some stairs and I couldn't attack them at all and I had to reload my save. I had one issue where a building texture didn't load in, so there was all the stuff around the building, but not the building itself. It was just invisible. So I guess I wouldn't call this the least buggy game I've ever played, but it's no Skyrim. But now it's time for my favorite part of the game, and honestly my favorite part of making these videos, and that is the story. That stuff gets you. Now, I've already touched on this game a little with the characters, but I do want to say that I think overall it had one of the best stories that a piece of Spider-Man content ever delivered. Not the best, mind you, but one of them for sure. So let's start small. How about the side missions? I think the missions were pretty good. I really love seeing more of the Miles and Rio dynamic, and the missions like the community music missions showcase that. I'd really like to see more of it. Actually, the whole mission just felt like a lot of fun, and you better believe I picked through that entire museum. Of course, Howard's side mission was incredibly heartfelt. So was the mission where you find that grandpa and he talks about his wife. I just feel like a lot of care was put into these. It suited both Spider-Men perfectly, and I really feel like a lot of these were tailored to be played by either Miles or Peter. Meaning it was made for both. I feel like that wasn't clear. I loved the side mission with Yuri. The whole idea of Peter trying to stop Yuri from giving into her rage and resentment after he experienced the same thing was really potent to me, especially after all the time spent with her in the first game. I actually played the first half before finishing the main story, like while he was in the middle of the whole black suit thing, and I realized it was probably going to sully the message of that story if I kept going. It was pretty funny to have like roid rage Spider-Man preaching to Yuri about how it wasn't worth it to kill a person. Yuri, please don't do this. You know, they say mercy is the mark of a great man. I guess I'm just a good man. Well, I'm alright. The Flame was a really cool way to introduce Carnage. We already saw Shriek being made, so I think a more ambiguous take on Carnage was the right choice. Let me tell you though, Carnage better be an absolute menace. Venom was already such a huge problem that I think the wow factor of Carnage is going to have to be turned way up. I don't think it should be the same level of threat, but I want the danger to be much larger to Spider-Man himself, at least. Not necessarily all of New York. The main story, though, was amazing. Venom, in my eyes, is always a great plot device. It doesn't always speak, it doesn't always express itself as thoughtful or show its intentions. Because of that, it can be used almost exclusively as a metaphor. It's not often that writers have the chance to be this naturally on the nose about what a character represents. If you watch my Spider-Man 3 video, and you should, you know that Venom represented hatred in that movie. Forgiveness was what liberated Peter from Venom, symbolized by going to the church belfry to remove it.
You want forgiveness? Get religion.
What's going on here?
Gosh, that was a good movie. Venom doesn't quite represent hatred in this story. In fact, I think the writers went out of their way to show that this Venom was something else entirely, even going out of their way to show the destruction of the church from Spider-Man 3, or at least I think it was. I'm not very good when it comes to Catholic architecture. Peter has a lot of trouble in his life, and that trouble has built up resentment over time. Imagine for a moment that you're Spider-Man. It feels like the world is sitting on your shoulders, and you found yourself responsible for New York. And try as they might, there's not much that the people around you can do to help. It's not their fault, they're not spider people, so it wouldn't be reasonable to be angry with them. When you're so much stronger than everyone else, it's hard to expect them to pick up your slack. Thing is though, resentment isn't always reasonable. In fact, most of the time it's not. A lot of resentment comes from a place of insecurity or low self-esteem, being afraid that you aren't adequate, and the only way to distract yourself from that feeling of inadequacy is to be angry with everyone but yourself. Peter has this symbiote, and now he feels like everyone around him rides his coattails as he keeps them safe. It keeps getting worse and worse for him as he's pushing away those very people out of resentment. While he's able to overcome this resentment with the help of a friend who shows that they really care about him, which I think is a great story beat, he still has that insecurity in him. Until he's able to conquer that, he still has that symbiote living inside him, still has that kernel of resentment. That insecurity will continue to yield resentment and anger in him until he can confront it. I think we've all had or have something like that in our lives. Most of us have overcome things too, I think. Large or small, and if we're lucky, we found ourselves the better for it. Stronger, but without that angry voice in our head. I really, really like the idea of that recurring resentment from that latent insecurity. It's such a good storytelling device, and it gave us such a good use for Anti-Venom. I've seen people complain that like a loss of self is part of the give and take of having a symbiote. But I think that's not the dynamic that they're even going for with this. It's not about being stronger and losing yourself. It's about being stronger and either ignoring the problems within yourself or being stronger for the problems in yourself. It's showcasing the importance of overcoming and showing the strength that overcoming can yield in a person. And that's no matter what they've been through. I think there's supposed to be a parallel between this and Miles's forgiveness of Lee. The thing is, the story is less about resentment and more about a totally justified anger for the man who killed your father, and realizing that putting the anger aside is more important if it means you're saving the people you love. Come to think of it, it's beat for beat the story that Harry has in Spider-Man 3. And it's a good story, but it ties in less with the overall theme, I think. Because think of MJ, when she becomes small MJ, Shriek, she lets fly all her bitterness toward Peter. And some of this bitterness is valid in a way, but she doesn't want to hold them against Peter, but her insecurities about her own failings, like with her book, keep pushing her to the edge and falling victim to Shriek. Harry has the same issue. His whole MO is to save the world, and he wants to do it with his best friend by his side. But coming out of treatment, which was an ordeal that his friends weren't present for, he finds that Peter and MJ are back together. And it kind of seems like Peter has a new best friend too in Miles. What's worse is that he finds out that Peter is Spider-Man. Something that he was never told over the past decade, but something that this new kid knows immediately. Harry winds up feeling forgotten and unwanted. And it only gets worse as Peter goes through the whole symbiote thing and winds up treating him terribly. And even after, when Peter won't give it back to him, even with good intentions, Harry is too far gone. The insecurity in Harry is huge, and therefore, Venom is huge. Venom fills in that void, gives Harry a way to keep Peter with him forever and a way to get rid of Miles. And in a roundabout sort of way, a way to heal the world, I guess. It's just like how Venom offered Peter a way to be a better Spider-Man, quote unquote. But that's just Venom. The main theme of his story is in the same vein, but it's a tad different. A lot of insecurities come from a feeling of inadequacy, and that feeling of inadequacy can throw us off kilter. We have to overcompensate for this perceived flaw, and that aspect of our lives finds itself out of balance.
Balance is a process, not a destination. I'm still working on that. Oh, come on. Come on.
Maybe May had a point. I can't take too much on. Something's gotta give.
Spider-Man 2 is ultimately a story of balance, I think. Peter stands on the precipice of doing right by the city or doing right by himself. And it's not a new concept for a piece of Spider content by any means. In fact, the other piece of Spider content named Spider-Man 2 grappled with this same idea. But unlike other Spider-Man stories, this version of Spider-Man has the ability to balance his life without sacrificing the safety of New York, and that's Miles. I think it's showcased perfectly by the beginning of the game. Peter has to leave school and sacrifice his brand new job to fight Sandman, and Miles is right there beside him, leaving school the exact same way, but Peter loses his job and Miles gets practically no consequence. Peter has lived as Spider-Man for so long, and every time he tries to do something for Peter Parker, it's lost against his responsibilities as Spider-Man. But now he has MJ to devote his time to, he has to pay the mortgage on his house, his best friend is coming back into his life, and now there's this subsequent business that he's looking after. He does, however, have a protege, and that's Miles. Peter has the option to balance out his life, but he can't make himself do it. After May died, he feels like he has to do better. He has to be a better Spider-Man. And that's where Venom comes in. Now he lives in resentment. While his Spidey work is improved, his life as Peter really suffers. That's one of the reasons I really like that fight between Miles and Peter, and why I really like that ending of Peter passing the temporary mantle on to Miles as Spider-Man of New York. Miles helps him conquer Venom time and again when he has the suit on, when he has to get rid of the little bit of Venom inside him, and finally when Venom's a big old boy. Sometimes the best way to find balance in your life is to let those around you help you. If you can't run, you walk, and if you can't walk, you crawl, and if you can't crawl, you find someone to carry you. And that's something that resentment and insecurity makes very difficult, but it's something that can really alleviate tension in a person's life. So if you're one of the people who saw that one IGN or whatever article about how Miles will be the main Insomniac Spider-Man moving forward and complained about it incessantly, you're dumb.
Huge mistake. You can never replace Spider-Man with Miles Morales. Go woke, go broke. Can't wait to see these games flop.
Can't wait to see you flop against the pavement when I go broke on your kneecaps with a 2x4. If you can't see that that's what they've been building up to over all these games, I think you have brain damage. Obviously, Peter isn't going to be gone, alright? He's obviously going to be in the next game. In fact, I'm sure he's going to be an equally playable character by the time we get the Green Goblin fight that we're definitely going to get. For now, though, I think it was a really good choice to leave Miles and Peter in the spot that we left them. Story gets an A from me. So, does Spider-Man 2 deserve Game of the Year? As a person who's only played Spider-Man 2 and no other games from this year, let alone nominees, I'm gonna say yes. Definitely. Maybe the Gollum game, but that kind of got snubbed in the nominations, so what are you gonna do? It's by no means a perfect game, so if you think any of those nominees can be called such a thing, then it probably deserves Game of the Year over Spider-Man. Hurts to say, because I do love this game. I've just heard so much about Baldur's Gate 3 being this titan of the industry, and I don't see another game winning. Who knows? I'm gonna say it though. KOTOR walks where the Baldur's Gate 3 could run. And walking is an understatement. Just saying. That's all I'm gonna say. I'll say more. KOTOR was an amazing game. But that's all I have. Thank you all so much for watching. I have to say there are about 1,000 more of you than I had last time I was sitting here recording an outro. This is the type of content I make. I don't just do the Minecraft stuff. I really make all manner of things. The next video I'm gonna make is probably gonna be more of a comedy-based one. I've never decided on a video topic so quickly as I did this one because Spider-Man 2 came out like a couple days, I think, after I posted my last one, and I played it all through, and I'm like, man, I really want to talk about this. So I try to be funnier most of the time, but I really wanted to take this game apart and talk about it. I really do hope you guys are having fun with the stuff I made, though. If you aren't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and you will become a member of Potato Creek University. We're the best, freest, and easiest university in the United States. If you'd like to know more about our history as a university, you can go ahead and click the link below, which will take you to this video, and then you'll get the reference. Go ahead and hit that bell notification too, so you can get notified the next time that I upload, and until then, just remember, I don't know.